Hey, and welcome to It's Meaningless. This is the podcast for startup entrepreneurs who are tired of stuck and are ready to face the brutal truth. Here we uncover the meaningless daily habits that keep you from protecting and growing in life and in business. And we're here today to talk about how long of a runway do you need? So for startups, um, yeah, for startups, when you're just starting a business, I mean, obviously it's an incredibly exciting time. I know I've been in that position several times. So, but like just because there's excitement to start, and uh, just because there's excitement to start doesn't mean that's how it always ends up. So the thing is, like, I mean, most people know by now. What is it? I don't know. I think it's like 50% of businesses all startups fail within the first 5 years or something like that. I think it's like 80% by 10 years. So with that said, there's a reason to like want to know first. Like no one wants to jump into starting up a new widget selling service or app or whatever, only to have it bomb and tank and I don't know, be on welfare. Um, but so effectively, the thing is like, what do you do? How do you know? How do you know, like when it's time to start and when it's not? So I'll put it like this. So for me, I'll call it my first startup. It's not really my first startup, but I'll call it my first. Um, the startup by yeah, I'll call it my first. Um, the first startup I did, I started up with um, I don't know. I've been working in the area in the industry for about technically technically about 12 um yeah, technically about 12 years, I guess. It's been 12, was it 12 years? I'm trying to get my math right. Maybe 10 years. Just call it 10 years. I've been working in the industry at that point for about 10 years. And then by that point, I got seen a lot of stuff. One real big benefit of the position I was in was I got to work with a lot of business owners. So I got to see a lot of like what goes on behind the scenes. Not everything, but a lot. A lot more than I would have if I were kind of at a super duper corporate gig. Um, or yeah, or just not in that position. So that helped a bunch. Um, but I I don't know, just got the idea. And for me, like I pray about a lot of stuff. And for me, I really felt like in praying about it that was something for me to do, to jump in and start to do. Now, don't get me wrong. Like at the end of the day, um, I think there are a lot of factors that go into like starting something and not starting something. And a lot of times it's a lot of practical stuff in terms of like how to know when you're ready. Like for me, like I call it cheating. Don't get me wrong. Like this I get to do it, but uh, uh, technically it's available to everybody, but not everybody chooses to use it. But it's kind of like cheating. So um, being able to have a all-knowing source to tell me, hey, look, it's time to go. Then that it just it's kind of like I don't know, call it a security blanket or whatever. But anyway, that's one of the things I like to use at the end of the day. Um, well, that's kind of the thing I like to use at the end of the day, but at the same time, um, there are practical tools to check. Let's just say in between now and that time, like uh, in the past 10 years that I've been running this business, I've learned a lot more, and on purpose. I've learned a lot more in terms of like just practical things to check for, um, which helps me to be a better business person. Helps me to be able to know when the signs are, when the times, what signs represent what seasons, and when the right time is for different things. So anyway, I started out, and when I did, um, like it was a good time to start. Um, I at the time um I was effectively I was working a 9 to 5, well, sort of 9 to 5 ish. I was a consultant, and um, I don't know. I guess I got to a place where I realized like if I start out on my own, like I can't do like a full time job and still do um this other thing for me. And the problem for me at that point was just like I probably could have worked it in hours wise. I was single. Um, I didn't have like any super duper other big obligations at the time. But for me at that time, it was more of an energy issue. I think I talked about this on the last podcast, on the last episode, where there can be a point where you're in a job or something, and like energy wise, you like if it's sometimes when it's time to go, like energy wise, you just can't like you come you do the job, you come home, you watch TV, veg out, and that's all the energy you have because you spent all of it in the job. So that was kind of where I was at that point. So I knew like if I was gonna do this, then I had to leave. So I left. Um, don't get me wrong. It's like, well, I'll say this. So 10 years later, I'm still here. So I haven't had a W-2 since, which I don't think it's anything necessarily to brag on. I wouldn't really say it's anything to brag on at all. And let's just say I've had everything I needed in this time, and um, I had everything I needed during this time, and um, I'm here. Like there have definitely been up seasons, there have definitely been down seasons, and um, yeah, I've learned a lot, and like I built a lot, so which I'm thankful for. Um, but I guess a thing that I remember actually, so before I jumped out, there was a guy who, at one of the clients I was working at, before I left my job, there was a comptroller at one of the clients that I was working for. Um, and one of the comments he made was like, it's good that you kind of have, um, kind of a plan or whatever, some clients set up already, because a lot of people like jump out and don't really have much of a plan and wind up having to come back and work a job. Um, and like at the time that he said that, I was like, well, no, can't say I have. I can't say I have too much uh, planned or whatever. Like I had a couple things that were on the plate that I thought would materialize. Which, by the way, um, just kind of a side lesson for business. Like none of those materialized. Like yes, absolutely none of them did. Um, which is just kind of a side lesson for business. Like it's it's almost it's almost I can't say it's without fail because obviously some things do come through, but um one of the things that I've realized in business is things rarely go as you plan them to. Um Things that seem like they're a slam dunk um in terms of like new relationships, new sales, stuff like that. A lot of times um those opportunities don't work out for one reason or the other or another. um it doesn't mean all of them don't, but a lot of them don't. So anyway, that was um that was really this guy's advice, and I think in some respects it kind of is good advice. um Except like it's still nebulous in terms of like how do I judge that. So um real quick, I want to jump into a couple of practical things that you can kind of into in terms of like, is this the right time for me? Like, do I get started? When do I get started? So number one I would suggest is like, start now. So no, I'm not saying, hey, go quit your job today. What I'm saying is start now. Start with what you have, start small. Um, and this is after 10 years of doing this and starting ventures and creating new stuff like in this time. Um, Start now. Start with what you have. Start now. Start something. In other words, because in other words, the first goal you really have when you're launching a startup is, first thing you want to do is get proof. You want to get proof that there's a market for it. You want to get proof that there's a market for it at the price that you need to sell it at, that you want to sell it at, and then that you need to sell it at. Um, and You also want to get proof that this is something you want to do. Because in other words, sometimes it's easy to look at something and be like, "Oh man, that looks really neat," or "Oh man, that would make a bunch of money. That sounds like a cool idea. I think I might like to do that." And then you get into it and realize, "Oh no, I do not want to do this." Um, and I know some people say, "Well, if it's making money, then it's all okay." But I have come to realize it's not really like that. Like, yeah, it's just not. Um, yeah, it's just not. Like, if you're doing something that you don't want to do, at the end of the day, like, I don't know that it really matters how much money you get paid, because at the end of the day, it's like, especially if it's gonna take so much time and depress you so much. And I don't necessarily mean full blown depression, although it can be that, but like weigh you down so much that the amount of the time and the cost of therapy later on that it'll take to bring you back out, like that's is to me, it probably doesn't come out to be worth it. Um, yeah, like if you want to sit down and calculate all the numbers, like you can definitely try it, but it's a whole like digging yourself out. No, I guess this kind of comes down to value, because digging yourself out of an emotional hole, like there's there's few dollar amounts that you could probably put on that, and I would argue that there aren't any dollar amounts that you can put on that. But so effectively, those are the goals. Number one, like, is there a market for it? Is will the market support a price that's going to make this thing profitable? And number two, and finally, do you want to do this? So, um, I would say the only other thing I would add to this is one of the things that you want to make sure, in other words, probably the thing that you want to make sure of next. In other words, when it's time to like, if you're working like a W-2 job or something, and you're trying to determine like, when do I need to switch? When do I need to leave? When do I need to start putting more and pushing more into this business? I would say it's effectively after you've completed the previous step. In other words, after you've gotten proof. That is, you have sales, you have customers that have proven that. So effectively, you have a proven product, you have a proven sales system, and probably a proven marketing system. But you don't necessarily have to have the proven marketing system to start out if you have the other two. But effectively, proven product. You know that the price point is, in other words, the price point that you're already selling it at, you already know that's a profitable price point to support like your operations, all the operations you need to support going forward. Now, like if you're doing this and it's not really making any money, of course, that's when you've calculated all the expenses in. Like you do this and it's not making any money. And if you need help with that, like definitely get a CPA, talk to a CPA, and in fact, if you need one, feel free to reach out. I know a few. But yeah, definitely get a CPA. It's not a ton of money for them to look over some numbers and kind of like give you some guidance on um like, is this profitable or not. But like once you know that you have something that's profitable, that the numbers work, you have a proven way of selling it, then like you have a proven market, then at that point, like you're losing money, probably. Like, like unless you're selling something for, I don't know, 3 cents a piece or something. And even then, like if you selling it for 3 cents a piece, like if there's some electronic components or whatever, and there's a real market for it, like so what? 3 cents a piece. You selling 30 million a month, then so what? Um, um, so yeah, that's that. As long as you have those things, it's time to jump. Because like I said, at that point it's costing you money probably to keep spending time working that job when the earning potential is so much more. If you divert your energy from this thing over here that's making a static amount of money every year to this thing over here, that continues to produce the more you put into it, which is the reason for starting a business in the first place. So that's all I have for this one. This one's been fun. And yeah, be back next week for another one. So take care.